Welcome, biotech innovators and investors. You are tuned in to Drug Development Disco, the LinkedIn Live series that explores the vibrant intersection of science, capital, and commerce. I'm your host, Nick Mitchell, BioCentury's head of product, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Matt Krebs, my co-host. Matt helps biotech leaders find the information, people, and capital they need to bring innovative drugs to market. He's been at it for more than 20 years. As BioCentury's growth accounts team manager, Matt is one of the first people to recognize shifts in the biotech landscape. If you're looking for more biotech perspective, Matt records and releases his own sessions weekly. Matt's next session digs deeper into the challenge of finding the right development partner. Matt, we're looking forward to your most recent recording.
Got it. I can't wait to.
Matt, to enliven our competitive intelligence conversation today, we've invited Sophia Lugo. Sophia is CEO of Radar Therapeutics. You know Sophia. Tell us why you felt that Sophia was someone our audience should hear from.
So thanks, Nick. I've known Sophia since just the beginning of this year, but I feel like, honestly, Sophia, we've known each other much, much longer, and I mean that honestly in a good way. And when I thought about this episode and I thought about, the specific use case of competitive intelligence landscapes, Sophia, you were top of the list and one of the people I thought of immediately.
Thanks, Matt. Please join me in welcoming Sophia Lugo to Drug Development Disco. Sophia, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Matt. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I know we've been on calls many times, Matt, and this is one of the first ones that's not about competitive intelligence in the making. So nice to abstract.
Very cool. Okay, folks, so today's episode dives deep into therapeutic landscaping as an essential ingredient to competitive intelligence. It's a mouthful, no denying that, but it's a critical piece of the puzzle at all stages of drug development. Matt, when customers first bring competitive intelligence up to you, what is their mood? Do they view this as a daunting task, or are they somewhat curious and thinking that this might enhance their strategy?
Indeed. So this can be perceived as a challenge for some people. But I once had a BD-minded CEO that once told me that the competitive intelligence world is like going wilderness camping with your friends. And Sophia, I know this will resonate with you, like the BD-minded CEO, another hat you got to put on. It's, and someone in that group of friends better bring with them a damn good map. Right. So it's like we're going wilderness camping and that map better be up to date. So at BioCentury, I'm trying to provide that map as well as a strategic guidebook.
Awesome, Matt. Thanks for that perspective. Sophia, as CEO of Radar Therapeutics, you are, of course, no challenge to navigating complex landscapes and the need for a good map. I'm curious, when did competitive intelligence first become a critical part of your leadership role? Was there a specific moment when you realized that this was a priority that you really needed to elevate?
Yeah. So the moment for me was very clear, and I'll comment first. It is definitely when wilderness mapping with friends is also a nice way to put it. Sometimes you don't have friends. And now I've made a friend in Matt who helps me out, and so I think viewers know that. Yeah, I'm a BCIQ customer, so I am one such customer. But it was very clear to me when competitive intelligence, but broadly I'll actually call it landscaping, became important. And it was, we're an academic spinout. And so in academia, you can invent something. We're a platform technology as well. Specifically, we're in the cell and gene therapy space, which are often platforms. And for a platform technology, in order to have a right to play or to spin out your company and make this technology into a therapeutics company that happens to have a core technology, you really, at first, you need to know you have a technological advantage that translates to a biological advantage in some disease. You have novel and distinct IP. Your technology is breakthrough enough that you have a right to maybe make it to a therapeutics company. And as soon as you know you want VC funding, you have to start landscaping. It became very clear. You can't just go to a VC and tell them, oh, we have this great technology tool and not know how you're going to apply it. Because at the end of the day, if they're funding you to make a therapeutic, it is your job to have that map already outlined, to already tell them, here's the clear path of where we're going. And you can learn a lot from VCs, but you can't show up and have no clue about where you're going. Part of your job, part of my job as a CEO also my co-founder's job is to provide that clear roadmap of how to get from tool and why we're going to make the world better for a certain patient population or for many patient populations. But that has to be clearly drawn. So I'd say from academia, you should start thinking about it. But I think the most important part is showing you have something distinct, novel, and breakthrough. As soon as you want to become a company, your business model becomes important. How you want to impact the world becomes important. There is no way to value what you're going to do unless you have a clear roadmap of where you're going. And this is where the wilderness hunting started for us. And you don't have to get it right at first. This is going to be an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. You're doing this all the time. You also want to make sure you're in a fundable space, because if you're not in a fundable space, you might think about alternate ways to fund what you want to do if you want to make it into a therapeutic. But if you're in the VC space, you want to make sure VCs are funding it. So there's a very clear point. As soon as you're starting a company, in my view, you should be thinking about it.
That's a great point for everyone who's listening and really continuing to enjoy the wilderness mapping analogy that we brought to today's show. Before we get too deep into the business side of landscaping or competitive intelligence, I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the biology or the science that's behind Radar Therapeutics. Sophia, can you talk a little bit about the biology and the vision for transforming that into a technology that really impacts medicine?
Yeah, would love to talk about Radar. So essentially what Radar is, at Radar, we make programmable, precision expressed genetic medicines. This means that we have genetic payloads that only turn on in the right cells and not in the wrong cells. Our vision is to make a step change in safety and accessibility to genetic medicines. We want genetic medicines that know what cell type they're in vivo are able to only reprogram misbehaving cells and leave healthy cells or non-target cells alone without having to, do it ex vivo and isolate them outside of the body. And so what we've done at Radar, or how Radar works, essentially it is a selectively activated or conditionally activated mRNA therapeutic.
Okay.
We've added a logic gate in front of the part encoding the therapeutic protein. It is a logic gated mRNA. And so the promise of mRNA is that you could, encode in RNA, in AUCGs, you can encode a protein of interest, and that protein is your drug. And you can turn your cell into a drug factory. So that's writability. And it's great that the COVID vaccine showed that there is a therapeutic potential for synthetic mRNAs. But we also want our RNAs to be able to be smart and read what cell they're in before they write. And that's where our logic gate comes in. So essentially our logic gate makes our mRNA default off. It's off until it finds a misbehaving cell, let's say a cancer cell. And when it finds this cancer cell, it turns on and does the thing it's supposed to be, whether that's removing the cell or calling the immune system to it. And when it's in healthy cells, it doesn't do anything. It's inert. So this gives it readability. And how does it know it's in the right cell type? And this is the really cool part. What we do is our sensor is essentially looking for a distinguishing RNA signature. It's scanning the transcriptomic profile of a cell. So it's scanning the RNA profile of the cell. So your DNA, same in all cells broadly. The RNA is really what defines the protein profile of cells, so that dynamic profile. And there's been an explosion of single cell transcriptomic data that tells us a lot about what drives the diversity of cells. As we know, cells are diverse, over 200 cell types. And then you have the healthy cells versus the disease cells. And you could read all those differences in the RNA. And what Radar is able to do for the very first time is take that code, read it directly. So directly read the transcriptomic profile, look for a unique marker that says this is the thing driving disease, or this is what's distinguishing for the cell type, and then make the mRNA turn on only in those conditions. So essentially what we do is we made a sensor that can read the universal language of the cell. And when it finds the code that you're looking for, that distinguishing signature, it makes the mRNA make the drug. So conditionally activated drugs that are in vivo and that you can program.
Sophia, thank you for breaking that down. I confess I read a number of primary literature articles to get on the same page with you, and it took me a minute to get it. But once I understood the intricacies and the potential, I was very excited. And I'm guessing that investors, I noticed that you recently closed a seed round, $13 million. Congratulations. But it really gives the sense that investors have a lot of confidence in this technology. And also, I'm just curious, like, was there a particular part of the technology, the vision, or even the competitive intelligence that resonated with the investors?
Yeah, I think we start with the vision. I think this technology, it hits a chord, it hits a big problem that all genetic medicines companies are facing. Everyone is thinking about delivery, and there are multiple aspects of delivery that everybody's thinking about. And BioCentury's written articles on this too. So even BioCentury is thinking about it. And delivery, it's been a challenge for genetic medicines to firstly get to the right cell types, and secondly, be targeted in what cells they are changing or manipulating. And these are ubiquitous. Everyone's talking about these problems, and a lot of companies are springing up doing one or the other or both. Radar thinks about this targeting problem in a different way than everybody else is thinking about it. A lot of people are thinking about, well, can we change the vector to find a cell surface marker and, only enter those cells, which has turned out extremely hard to do.
Mhm.
Radar thinks about it a different way. Let's just directly read the code that fully defines the cell. It defines the cell surface markers. It
Mhm.
defines internal markers. It defines things that aren't encoded for, because we can read non-coding RNAs, get at the source of truth of difference, which is the RNA profile, and use that to tell you what cell you're in. And so you could be systemically administered, you could be administered everywhere, but you kind of flip the problem on its head. So firstly, the vision. Investors have known if they have any genetic medicines in their portfolio, they know this is a problem. That company is probably experiencing a challenge with it. And when we come with this new novel solution, I think that, investors are looking for patterns that helped. It was not hard to convince anyone in life sciences that this is a problem. The next step is, can we solve this major problem that all genetic medicines companies are having, essentially? Maybe, let's say, except for vaccines, but everybody else is having it. Can we solve the problem? This is where the promise of the technology comes in. I think it's not many times that you really have a breakthrough technology or a technology that really does things in a completely different way. And that's the category we're in. And so I think a lot of investors had already read the paper. They didn't know this was going to become a company, but they read the paper and they thought this was a really promising way to look at it, a fresh new way after decades of trying to do specificity with the vector alone. Then it's, they're wondering, okay, well, great, technology is cool, new problem is real, we know it. Can this team do it? Then they look at the team page, innovation is people. And so it is our job, it's my job, it's my co-founder's job, Eric, to recruit the best people to this team. You look at our advisory board, you look at our other two co-founders, Professor Gao at Stanford, Rising Star at Stanford, NIH New Innovator Award, many other awards. And then we have Professor Jim Collins from MIT, who's the father of synthetic biology. Nobody else, he basically invented the field. So this is the guy you go to if you want to know about synthetic biology. So check mark. These are some of the best people in the world. We have our other advisors. We have Ramesh Subramanian, who's been CEO at Acidia and CEO at Dyne Therapeutics and an expert in RNA, which there are not many. We have Svetlana Lucas, who's CBO at Scribe, and there's maybe not a better person in BD on the West Coast. We have Dr. Klein, who's an expert in solid tumors, and we have Dave Schaefer, who's really well known here on the West Coast, co-founder of many companies, including 4DMT. So the team is strong. And they know that we've brought the best minds together to say, hey, this is a cool technology and we can solve this problem. And then lastly, we also showed that, we went out and sought the feedback of pharma and got many awards from Amgen, from AbbVie, from J&J. We got an equity investment from Lilly in this round. And we showed pharma believes this is a way of solving it. Pharma's frustrated too. So you show them those indicators of interest, but the vision and the problem you're solving has to be clear.
It doesn't hurt that you're very persuasive.
It's easy when you believe in it too. I was recruited. technology.
And clearly you do, and you know some really good, powerful lessons there about leadership, and that you know people. You said people are innovation, and I think that that's a great philosophy. Uh, you said that really when you started, you know, speaking with investors, that was the first time that the concept of landscaping and competitive intelligence really came as a priority. How has your perspective and investment in competitive intelligence evolved over the last few years?
It only increases because it is the most great. You made a great technology. The most important decision you're going to make for a platform is where to point it. And if you're wrong, that costs millions of dollars and could be several years. Could be the death of your company. It is the most important decision. So it has to be the most robust decision you make. And when I first approached it at the company, it really felt like it wasn't just a wilderness, you're just in the dark in a forest.
Yeah.
You don't know how to choose the best tree.
Yeah.
And I've been a consultant before, so I've used databases and I've had aggregated data, but as a small company, you don't have access to all these things and a full analyst team in the back. The very first thing we did is hire consultants. So it's great
Okay.
M&A, Life Sciences M&A bank. And they did a great competitive mapping and competitive intelligence project that really told us, hey, here's 300 indications we looked at. Now we pared them down by our biological advantage, route to clinic, commercial opportunity. We had that. We felt so strong. We prioritized them. For consultants out there, we did this Harvey ball exercise. We had a great thing to present to investors. And then you start using the technology and you start updating your assumptions on your performance metrics and what you can actually achieve for different diseases. And you start having to move that. And I cannot have these consultants hired full time in-house. And so you have to start thinking, as CEO, I'm like, okay, well, I still need to make this robust decision. What do I do?
Yes.
I'm constantly talking to people, constantly, I think talking to pharma is a great thing to do because
Okay.
they'll have problems in-house where they know, well, off-target toxicity was a real issue here. So, but you can't just go with a blank slate to pharma. You want to know what they're working on. So you also want a tool that tells you what is pharma interested in today and what have they been interested in the past. And so I tried out many databases, actually. I won't say who they are, but I tried out many databases to try to just be continuously updated.
Okay.
What's getting financed out there? If I go to an investor, what should I talk to them about? What have they been interested in or have expertise in? What's pharma interested in? What's in the clinical pipeline for this disease? How am I continuously telling the story of how we could be better than standard of care? And finally, I found BCIQ because it just makes it so easy. It makes it much easier
Great.
to have that broad view before you go into a conversation and get the deep thought that a person has had, which is really valuable.
Thank you for that. Matt, hearing this evolution in thinking from Sophia and investment makes me wonder, you know, in the market today, what kinds of trends are you seeing related to investments in competitive intelligence, and maybe anything that's changed in the last year or two?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought I was on mute. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Sophia touched on it, but this is especially a widespread use case that I've come across with platform plays or companies that have multiple shots on goal. So where you're deciding, strategically about different therapy areas and indications to go after. So not only does this use case, resonate with me, but this is literally the reason I get out of bed in the morning. This is what I do. And I'm here to enable people just like Sophia, get the data analysis that they need to make the best strategic decisions they can.
Thanks, Matt. Sophia, you've already given us some insight into the kinds of data that you look at and why you look at it when doing landscaping. I wanted to ask a slightly different question, which is when you finally get a landscape that you're happy with, that feels current and up to date, and you're analyzing it, how much of that focus is devoted to looking to learn from the decisions of other people, potentially identify collaborators, as well as balancing the kind of competition awareness that is, of course, central to the activity?
I would say, at all times, I have all of those lenses in mind. So at all times, and I think you should, as CEO, it's different for the people who work at the company and for the person who has to have the BD hat on. So for people working at the company, I want everyone focusing on chasing opportunity. Like we have a reason to play here. It's my job to make sure we're on the right track, but everyone here, want them to continue to believe, but know that an off-ramp could be coming if we don't work out in a certain indication. But for my hat, I'm always thinking about, I should be broadly aware, and actually I might dissect this in different ways. There are other companies that have technologies that are also, in the same space of cell type specificity for genetic medicines, and they accomplish it in different ways. I want to know broadly, even for these companies that might directly be called competitors on the technology front, I want to broadly know where they're headed because I learn something about, especially if they're ahead of us, we learn something about, if we see a shift, we can learn or glean something from that pivot that is both helpful to us and then lets us know either maybe we have a competitive advantage there, they just couldn't achieve it, but we could.
Okay.
Or we learned that there was something else the market didn't like. And you won't actually know until you have more conversations about it, but you should be gleaning something from it. So again, in that lens, I'm thinking of both like something that's just helpful for us from what they learned or something that's gives us a competitive edge. You also want to know, we're at separate times, often I'm thinking of you have to have a competitive edge against other technologies out there. And let's not even call them technologies. I think we should have an edge for a particular indication. We should have an edge against all modalities that are working in that space, small molecule biologic or cell and gene therapy, other mRNA technologies. It doesn't really matter. So at all times you're thinking, are we better than standard of care? Are we going to improve patient lives if we use our technology? Because if not, then, we don't really have a right to win here. So I'm thinking right to win. At other times, I'm fully looking for, as a genetic medicines company, there's no company out there that solves all pieces of the puzzle by themselves. I mean, I'd want to look at how much in-licensing and out-licensing goes on in different modalities, but my strong bet is strong bet. And genetic medicines needs the most because so many different parts of the genetic medicine are take a lot of innovation. There are whole companies focused on delivery, whole companies focused on payload engineering, and then whole companies focused on aspects within those.
Yeah.
And so at times I have my full synergies hat on.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to give you a percentage. I feel like I'm always have that lens because if I see something, I might automatically categorize it as competitive intelligence that I need to store here, have an answer ready for investors on where our edge is, or have an idea of like where our edge is better for patients. Or, I might store it in, we should actually start talking to this company and see if, we're guessing that we have an issue with what they're doing. They have an issue with what we're doing. And patients could be better off if we combine this. But then, I'm going to want to know about the reality of their business. I can look in and see what's their partnership strategy. I can look and see how much funding do they have because we can't partner with someone that doesn't have enough funding. And if someone has too much funding, they might not want to partner with someone that has less. So, I think how much time I dedicate to both of those, at times I fully have on my hat of we need to have a right to win in this space. At times I fully have on my hat of we're actually looking for a technology that does this and we want to see who we can talk that's out there. And at times I'm just looking through and categorizing in my head, like, okay, this could fit in this bucket or that bucket. So yeah, I'm hoping I answered your question, but I'd say it's hard to say the percentage, but both of those hats can be on. And sometimes I have one hat on the other. All genetic medicines companies need to have the synergies hat on and the competitive hat on. Synergy is really, really important for genetic medicines.
Aside from the importance of the synergy, the thing that I'm struck by is the thoughtfulness and the calmness that you bring to this challenge, right? And I think that that's just really helpful for everyone that, you sort of broke it down and said, I'm always kind of looking through all these different lenses and classifying them and using that information to help make the company successful. I know you and Matt have been working on some competitive intelligence use cases. And while we're loving the conversation, I'm sure that there are members of the audience who would really like to take a more hands-on analytical approach. How would you guys feel about getting into BioCentury's BCIQ and taking a look at this use case?
Sure. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Let's do it. So, as Sophia mentioned, using a database and something like the BioCentury BCIQ data sets, visualizing things and, looking at the macro is kind of key to a competitive intelligence synergistic play, like who's doing what by what stage, who's raised monies, who's partnered with who. Those are the types of things you said. So let's take a look at what that means. I'll share my screen here. So to kind of set the stage of what we're looking at, we're in the BioCentury BCIQ database. Thank you for the plug. And we're looking at, I've set up this with autoimmune, cancer, inflammation, and cell therapy. This is just a make-believe giant space as a sample search. And what this means is you'll be able to see visually who's developing what by what phase, who's partnered with who, just out of the box, number of programs by major therapy area, and by indication if we go a layer deeper. And then what I mean by cell therapy is I've selected a therapeutic modality here, and it's all of these, and we can see the individual ones once we go a layer deeper. But let me just set the stage there, and then ask Sophia, and possibly Nick, when you see this visualization, describe to me what you see here and how this begins to help you with that competitive landscape synergistic hat on.
Yeah. Firstly, what I see is something very nicely visually laid out, because what you see in most databases is a long Excel sheet that then, if you feel you're in a dark wilderness or whatever, and you look at an Excel sheet that gives you this information, but in a different long format, it is very frustrating. That's where you start to get a little less calm on how to dig through. So what I've really appreciated is, you should probably put all Excel sheets in a Tableau. This looks really good. And it makes it very easy to see that this make-believe situation, cancer is the most common use case, although, we split it up only into 3, but cell therapies, cancer reigns in the application area. I'm really interested in that autoimmune sliver and the orange sliver that I'm guessing is inflammation and how it's being applied. I also see that broadly, this is a pretty early modality, cell therapy. You see that mostly you have preclinical programs going on. So most of development seems to be preclinical. And then what's in the clinic is almost all in phase 1. Although we do see some approvals, and it's always good to see some approvals, and you want to know what's been approved, because you always want to know what's been approved. So that gives you an idea of how the FDA might be thinking about it, or what they already might have seen. And you do want to know what's in the clinic versus what's not, because again, what's in the clinic, FDA has seen something, and you can think about your own regulatory strategy. But what I see here is it's pretty early overall as a trend.
That's awesome. That is, and the visualization is like, this is why we've built it out this way. So I really appreciate that. That's what helps you. And then you mentioned, autoimmune, right? So if I wanted to drill into autoimmune, and I'm thinking about this from that competitive landscape hat on, it allows you to like continue that visualization and then look at indication wise who's developing what. Am I barking up the wrong tree? Is this the right space that you think about?
That's the right space. I would have double clicked on autoimmune. I want to say when I was a consultant, sometimes our job was just to take the Excel sheet and make it nice and visual like this so the clients could see for themselves and then give takeaways from, further analysis. But so this is great. Get it for free. Well, not for free, but all packaged in. Yeah, I mean, exactly what I would want to do is double click like you did on what does autoimmune mean, because it's pretty broad. And then I'd want to do a double click on maybe I have an idea of what was already interesting to me. Or maybe I want to see where these different disease categories lie on this map, like which ones are in the further along in the clinic and which ones are super early. And then I know we don't have much time, so what I find really useful is also looking at financing and deals, because you want to see who's funding them. Is this really a fundable space versus others? What kind of pharma are interested in these kinds of deals, if deals are happening, and how early are they going? And one thing I love about BCIQ is sometimes they're linked to articles where BCIQ has already done the next level of analysis. you take this, you want to go talk to people. So BCIQ's done some of that for you. Yeah, there you go. So this was actually how I got onto BCIQ was just really liking the BioCentury, publication side. And then finding out that there was also a database.
I think you've said our value proposition for us, and I'm not going to add on to any of that. And I really appreciate that the window that you came through was the analytic side of what we do, from our thought leaders, our in-house analysts that go out and talk to industry and try. Our objective is to do exactly what you said, is to lay out kind of that your map in the wilderness camping and with your friends like this. This is also a part of that map, and the stories, hopefully, and I'll end with this, it's not just what we do in the analysis, but we actually map it out for you sometimes. And I know this is how you originally came in, so I just wanted to kind of end on this one. We've run out of time, so I will be following with a video on some of the things we've talked about. Sophia, I love videos. I've been sending you little snippets from Vidyard and Loom and other things like that. So I'm going to hand it over to Nick from here, but I just want to say thank you so much for seeing the world through your eyes is amazing.
Thank you.
Agreed. Sophia, Matt, thank you both for joining us today on Drug Development Disco. It's been a pleasure diving into these biotechnology challenges with both of you, sharing them with our audience. Your insights and your calmness about being lost in the wilderness have really made this task much more approachable for our listeners. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Drug Development Disco is a limited series production. We'd love to hear your thoughts about it. If you found today's episode valuable, please let us know. And if there's a direction you'd like to see us take with this show, we're all ears. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.